Hey, if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that noti bell because it really helps out. Released in July of 1964, A Hard Day's Night marked a pivotal moment in the Beatles' early career. A moment where beatlemania wasn't just exploding across the world, it was being immortalized in both sound and cinema. As the band's third album, and the soundtrack to their first feature film, A Hard Day's Night, it was a cultural phenomenon that captured the electrifying energy of the Fab Four at their most youthful, charming, and irresistibly catchy. It was the first Beatles album to feature exclusively Lennon and McCartney originals, showcasing their rapidly maturing songwriting skills, while still riding the wave of their early pop rock appeal. Songs like the title track, Can't Buy Me Love, and If I Fell became instant beloved classics, reverberating across radio stations, stadiums worldwide, and generations. And yet, despite its monumental success and iconic status, A Hard Day's Night often finds itself overshadowed in critical discourse by albums like Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and even Help, which is frequently seen as the transitional bridge between the early sound and their later experimental work. A Hard Day's Night, therefore, is arguably one of the Beatles' most well-known albums due to its chart dominance, infectious hooks, and cinematic counterpart, but it's not always the most celebrated when discussing the band's artistic legacy. This video will be a deep dive into each track to uncover why this album, though often shadowed by its successes, deserves a more prominent place in the Beatles' celebrated, and in my personal opinion, perfect discography. In the brief window between the release of With the Beatles in November of 1963 and the recording session of A Hard Day's Night not even a year later, the Beatles underwent a transformation that few bands in music history have experienced in such a short span of time. What began as a surge of local stardom in the UK had evolved, almost overnight, into a full-blown global phenomenon. Beatlemania wasn't just a term coined by the press, it was a true cultural eruption, a screaming, uncontrollable force of nature that followed the Fab Four wherever they went. Between tours, television appearances, press conferences, and the unrelenting attention of fans and journalists alike, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr found themselves both propelled and imprisoned by their newfound fame. Despite the whirlwind of attention and their increasingly frantic pace of their daily lives, the band remained artistically focused, driven not by the mania around them, but by a hunger to evolve musically and prove themselves as more than just a passing pop sensation. It was during this period of heightened exposure and press that the seeds of A Hard Day's Night were sown. Manager Brian Epstein and producer George Martin recognized the urgency to maintain the Beatles' momentum while also pushing their creative capabilities. The idea for a feature film, a fictionalized glimpse into a day in the life of the band, materialized swiftly, and with it came the necessity for a full album of original material, something the band had never done before. Unlike Please Please Me and With the Beatles, which featured a mix of covers and originals, A Hard Day's Night would be their first fully self-written and self-sung artistic statement. This demand for all original songs tied to the production schedule of the film placed enormous pressure on Lennon and McCartney in particular. Yet, rather than buckle, they rose spectacularly to the challenge, crafting a set of songs that captured the joyful energy of their live performances, the tight-knit camaraderie of the band, and the growing sophistication of their songwriting abilities. The period between With the Beatles and A Hard Day's Night thus stands as a crucible moment for the band, a trial by fire that would not only refine their craft, but set the stage for their unprecedented dominance of the pop landscape through the rest of the 1960s. There's no better way to open an album than with a sound so instantly recognizable that it practically punches a hole through time, and that's exactly what the first chord of A Hard Day's Night does. That electrifying clang, played simultaneously by George Harrison, Lennon and McCartney, is more than just an introduction, it is a declaration. It tells you immediately that this isn't just another early Beatles record, that this is a sound of a band stepping confidently into a new chapter, shedding the skin of early cover songs and Merseybeat safety to reveal a sharper, more self-assured identity. Even before the first lyric, it's obvious. This album means business. As a song, A Hard Day's Night perfectly sells the tone for what is to come. It captures everything people loved about the Beatles' early songs: catchy hooks, relatable lyrics, and undeniable youthful energy, but with more polish, more sophistication, and more daring choices musically. Lennon's raw lead vocals, McCartney's soaring harmonies, and Harrison's shimmering guitar jangle all came together in a tight, punchy package that feels both familiar and refreshingly elevated. It's only been one album since with the Beatles, but already you can hear their growth. The songwriting is stronger, the arrangements are cleaner, and the band sounds tighter than ever. This track doesn't just open the album, it catapults it forward, setting a high bar and signaling that the Beatles weren't content with simply riding the wave of fame. They were already pushing the boundaries of their sound, and this was just the beginning. I Should Have Known Better is one of those Beatles songs you can't help but sing along to, no matter how many decades have passed. Opening with John Lennon's bright harmonica, one of the last times it would take center stage in the Beatles track, the song bursts with a kind of carefree energy that feels as fresh today as it did in 1964. It's that combination of melodic charm and vocal interplay that instantly pulls you in. The harmonies between Lennon and McCartney are golden, blending together with such ease and joy that it's easy to forget just how young they were when they recorded this song. It's no surprise that this track quickly became a fan favorite. It's effortless, catchy, and emotionally honest in a way that made teenage hearts race back then and still makes longtime fans smile today. What really sets I Should Have Known Better apart is its singable quality. Everything from the lyrical phrasing to the upbeat chord progressions invites the listener in, almost demanding that you hum, whistle, or full-on belt it out along with the band. It's simple without being dull, repetitive without overstaying its welcome, and emotionally earnest without ever feeling overtly dramatic. And in true Beatles fashion, there's that subtle layer of melancholy beneath the cheerful exterior, the regret and self-awareness in Lennon's delivery adding a touch of depth to an otherwise breezy tune. It may not be as critically dissected as later tracks in the Beatles' catalogue, but I Should Have Known Better has never needed that kind of analysis. It speaks for itself, bright, brilliant, and built to last. If I Fell is one of the most emotionally sincere and delicately constructed love songs the Beatles had written up to this point, and it remains a standout not just on A Hard Day's Night, but in their early catalogue as a whole. While it may seem like a simple love song on the surface, there is a vulnerability and cautiousness in Lennon's lyrics that give it surprising emotional weight. It's not about head over heels infatuation, it's about the fear of falling in love again, the hesitation of someone who's been hurt before. That theme of emotional reservation, paired with the soft shimmer of acoustic guitar strumming, light rhythmic drumming, and tender vocal harmonies, creates a track that feels intimate, almost like a whispered conversation between two close friends. It's understated, yet breathtakingly beautiful in its execution. What truly elevates If I Fell is that signature Lennon-McCartney harmony, so precise and so warm that it feels almost too perfect to be real. From the very first line, their voices intertwine in a way that feels completely natural, yet undeniably crafted. The gentle arrangement allows their harmonies to take center stage, floating over the song's waltz-like rhythm with a kind of aching sweetness. Ringo's restrained drumming and the subtle clean guitar strums are the perfect backdrop, never intruding, only supporting the song's emotional core. Unlike some of the more upbeat tracks on the album, If I Fell invites you to slow down, to listen closely, and to feel something real. It doesn't need to be loud to be powerful, it just needs to be honest. And in that honesty, it became one of the most beloved and enduring love songs the Beatles had given the world thus far. I'm Happy Just to Dance With You might not always be the first song that comes to mind when discussing the Beatles' hits, but for fans who love their infectious energy of their earlier work, it's a gem that has never lost its shine. Sung by George Harrison, the song bursts with a bright groovy rhythm from the very first beat, carried by Ringo's playful swishing drums that practically sound like a dance floor in motion. It's got a driving tempo that keeps your feet tapping and your head bobbing. And while its theme is sweet and simple, being content just dancing with someone you love, the musical arrangement gives it far more personality than its straightforward lyrics might suggest. It's one of those tracks that sneaks up on you with its charm, reminding listeners that the Beatles didn't need to reinvent the wheel with every song to make something genuinely enjoyable and timeless. What really makes this track stand out though is its subtle musical twists, particularly the unexpected but also satisfying tempo shift during the line "Just to dance with you." That moment, with its slight pullback before snapping right back into the groove, adds a layer of musical tension and release that prevents the song from ever sounding flat or predictable. It's a small but clever touch that keeps the song dynamic, keeping listeners engaged from the very start to the very end. George's vocal performance gives this song a unique flavour. His voice has a slightly more reserved, almost bashful quality compared to Lennon or McCartney, which fits the shy romantic sentiment perfectly. Far from being filler, I'm Happy Just to Dance With You is a testament to the Beatles' ability to take a simple pop idea and elevate it with rhythmic flair and melodic finesse, making it anything but generic. And I Love Her is the kind of song that sneaks into your heart the moment it begins. Gentle, intimate, and deeply romantic in that unmistakably McCartney way. It's one of the earliest glimpses into Paul's gift for acoustic balladry, a talent he would later master with songs like Blackbird and Mother Nature's Son. But even here, even in his early songwriting journey, Paul managed to craft something truly timeless. His voice is soft but sure, tender without being overly sentimental, and wrapped in a melody that feels as natural as a deep breath. It's simple, yes, but in the best way possible. It's the kind of simplicity that one can only come from with real confidence and emotional clarity. This isn't a love song trying to impress anyone, it's just a pure, open-hearted declaration, and that's what makes it so infinitely relatable. What elevates And I Love Her beyond a standard love song acoustic ballad is the gorgeous Spanish-tinged guitar work that threads itself between Paul's vocals. The finger-picked passages, performed by Harrison, brings a distinctly continental flair that gives the track a sense of sophistication and musical curiosity. It doesn't just accompany the melody, it dances with it, accenting Paul's voice like sunlight filtering through the leaves. That classical style picking not only enhances the romantic atmosphere, but also showcases the band's growing musical ambition. They weren't just making pop hits anymore, they were exploring, experimenting, and laying the groundwork for their more diverse and adventurous sounds that would define their later careers. And I Love Her, therefore, is a gentle reminder of that evolution, a soft spoken classic that continues to resonate not just because of how beautiful it sounds, but because of how genuine it feels. Tell Me Why is pure early Beatles energy, bouncy, melodic, and overflowing with that irresistible charm that made them the biggest band on earth. Right from the first Tell Me Why, it feels like a song ripped straight from the golden age of jukeboxes and high school gymnasium dances, the kind of track you can easily imagine spinning during a slow Friday night in 1964 while teens swayed in their saddle shoes. But it's not just some throwaway romp. Beneath its upbeat rhythm lies one of John Lennon's most dynamic vocal performances of the album. As he swings between doo-wop inspired duets and explosive solo lines with ease, there is a genuine frustration in his voice, veiled in cheerful harmonies from Paul and George, and that contrast gives the song a spark that still lights up today. What makes Tell Me Why stand the test of time is the way all the moving parts come together with such tight cohesion. The vocal interplay is unmistakable Beatles, the kind of seamless group harmony that just doesn't happen without hours and hours of instinctive chemistry. Lennon leads the charge, but Paul and George are right there behind him, weaving in and out like a practiced dance. And then there's Ringo, whose drumming might not just be flashy, but is subtly essential. His precise fills and sharp snare hits give the song its pulse, driving it forward without ever stepping into the spotlight. It's a deceptively well-constructed track, full of feeling and fun, that captures the sound of a band, not just performing, but performing together. Tell Me Why might not be the deepest Beatles song ever written, but it's a perfect example of how they could take even a simple tune and make it unforgettable, a classic of its time through and through. If there's one track on a hard day's night that truly needs no introduction, it's Can't Buy Me Love. From the very first moment it was released, it became not just a Beatles anthem, but a cultural moment. One that's echoed across generations and still finds new life today in films, commercials, and iconic TV moments like The Simpsons. Decades later, it's almost impossible to hear that opening chorus without singing along, and that's the sign of a song that's more than just popular, it's utterly timeless. With its irresistibly upbeat tempo, joyful energy, and clean rock sound, Can't Buy Me Love captured something universal, the idea that love and happiness can't be bought no matter how much money you have. And even though Paul wrote it, it's Lennon's backing vocals and the chemistry within the band that elevate it to a whole other level of infectiousness. What really makes the song shine, beyond the catchy message and hooks, is its masterful mix of contemporary rock and almost old-timey jazz club feel, especially in George's bright, twangy guitar solo that dances right in your ears with a kind of vintage charm. It's that blend of modern beat pop and timeless swing that makes this track feels just as fresh now as it did in the 60s. And of course, there's John. His harmony vocals in the background give the verses that extra push, adding drive and soul even when he's not leading the song. Every piece just clicks into place with a kind of effortless brilliance that makes you forget how skillfully it's all been crafted. Can't Buy Me Love isn't just the standout track of the album, it's one of the Beatles' first truly global anthems. A song that has lived far beyond its decade and continues to make new fans smile with every new listen. Anytime at All might not be the first song that comes to mind when fans think of A Hard Day's Night, but like so many so-called lesser-known Beatles tracks, it's still a slice of pure brilliance. Let's be honest, when it comes to the Beatles, even their most underappreciated tracks would be career highlights for any other band. And Anytime at All is no exception. Opening with a punchy, almost explosive bang that demands your attention, the song wastes no time letting you know it means business. That dramatic intro crash gives way to a confident, melodic Lennon vocal that is equally parts warm and urgent, promising to be there for someone whenever they need. Classic John. Earnest and raw, but never overdone. It's got that early Beatles charm with just enough emotional grit underneath to keep things interesting. What keeps the energy moving and the song shining is Ringo's light but driving drumming, which adds just the right amount of bounce without overwhelming the mood. It's upbeat, sure, but there is a tenderness in the delivery that makes it feel like more than just another pop number. And the chorus, short, sweet and satisfying, sticks in your head long after the song is concluded. Anytime at All may not get the same spotlight as Can't Buy Me Love or And I Love Her, but it's a perfect example of the depth the Beatles already had in their early songwriting by this point. Every part of the band clicks into place with practiced ease, creating something emotionally honest, musically tight, and endlessly replayable. For fans who dig a little deeper into the album, Anytime at All is like a hidden treasure, one that proves that once again, there really are no skips on a Beatles record. I'll Cry Instead might not only clock in at just under 2 minutes, but in that short span, it manages to say a lot. Not just lyrically, but also musically. Tucked deep into the A Hard Day's Night experience, this track is a personal favourite for many fans who appreciate the Beatles' more genre-bending moments. With its unmistakable country twang and toe-tapping rhythm, it's proof that even just 3 albums in, the Beatles weren't afraid to experiment and pull in influences from American music traditions that stretched far beyond their Mersey beat sounds they were known for. John's vocals here, crisp and confident, with a subtle edge of emotional restraint. He's hurting but not broken, and while the lyrics deal with frustration and heartbreak, the upbeat melody, brisk tempo, and infectious swing keeps the mood surprisingly light, almost defiant. What really sells the era-specific charm of I'll Cry Instead is the clever use of maracas and the song's tight, almost rockabilly bounce. The maracas add a light percussive shake that places the track squarely in that early to mid 60s sonic space. Combined with George's tasteful guitar picking and the country-inspired groove, this song feels like it belongs to both Liverpool and Nashville at the same time. It's another strong example of the Beatles' ability to absorb styles, twist them to fit their own, and in the process expand what pop music could sound like. While it may not be the most widely discussed track from A Hard Day's Night, I'll Cry Instead stands out for fans who appreciate the band's genre-hopping ambitions and unique sense of musical identity. In less than 2 minutes, the Beatles make it clear their sound was evolving fast and no boundary was too far for them to reach. Things We Said Today stands as one of the earliest glimpses into the Beatles' growing maturity as songwriters, a track that carries a kind of reflective weight not often found in pop music at the time. There's a subtle melancholy to it, not just in the lyrics, but in the tone of Paul's deeper vocal delivery, which already feels much more inward-facing than the youthful exuberance that defines much of the rest of A Hard Day's Night. This is a song about memory, about moments shared, and the way time gives them meaning. Whether those memories are being looked back on with warmth or with regret is left intentionally vague, and that ambiguity gives this song its true emotional depth. It's introspective, to be sure, but not in a way that slows the album's pace. It's more like a shadow cast in the midst of all the brightness, grounding everything with a hint of maturity that would grow stronger in later albums. Musically, it's hypnotic in a way that sets it apart from its neighbouring tracks. The back and forth between the solo vocals and harmonised duets adds layers of meaning, almost like a conversation being replayed or remembered differently with time. Paul leads the charge, but the subtle shifts in voice and harmony keep the song constantly in motion, like memories reshaping themselves the more they're revisited. There's something haunting yet comforting at the same time in the minor chord progression, a sound that lingers even after the song fades. Things we said today may not leap out with energy of Can't Buy Me Love or the jubilance of Tell Me Why, but it doesn't need to. It simmers rather than shouts, and in doing so reveals the emotional depth the Beatles were just beginning to tap into. It's one of a kind, and for fans who pay close attention, it quietly marks the moment the band began to think not just about sound, but about meaning. There's something about When I Get Home that hits just right for fans who love when the Beatles let loose with unfiltered energy. It might not be the most referenced track from A Hard Day's Night, but for those who know it, it often becomes a personal favourite, and it's easy to hear why. From the very first second, the classic 60s guitar-styled strumming in the background sets the pace, giving this song a signature upbeat feel and yet a slightly raw sound that defined so much of the Beatles' early era. And then there's that chorus, those harmonies that feel like pure adrenaline bouncing with excitement and emotion all at once. It's the kind of shout-along moment you can't help but join in on, a slice of pop rock gold bursting with youthful urgency. But what really ties When I Get Home together is the rhythm section, especially Ringo's drumming. Subtle? Maybe not. Necessary? Absolutely. His timing keeps the song from flying off the rails, grounding those slight tempo shifts that give the track its dynamic, almost unpredictable quality. It speeds up, slows down, then launches right back in again without losing momentum. Like the emotional roller coaster of anticipation when you're rushing home to see someone you care about. It's got a heartbeat all its own, and there's just something irresistible about how the song blends tight musicianship with raw feeling, almost like a band that couldn't wait to get it recorded. And maybe that's part of its charm. It sounds alive, loud, fast, a bit chaotic at times, but full of heart. When I Get Home may not get the widespread love of some other songs on this album, but to many fans, including myself, it's the deep cut that never gets old. From the very first note of You Can't Do That, it's clear that this is no ordinary Beatles track. It's quirky, sharp, and utterly lovable. There's an almost playful edge in the way the song kicks off, driven by that distinctive cowbell sound that adds a unique texture not commonly heard in their earlier work. It gives the song a kind of offbeat bounce that immediately grabs your attention, setting the stage for what's to come, a masterclass in Beatles vocal interplay. The start and stop moments throughout the track, where John's lead vocals cut in and out with perfect timing alongside the harmonies and backing vocals, showcase the band's remarkable ability to balance solo singing with duetting seamlessly. It's like watching a perfectly choreographed conversation unfold in musical form. Musically and vocally, You Can't Do That feels like a glimpse into the band's evolving confidence. No longer just pop stars, but true artists pushing boundaries within their own sound. The interplay between John's biting lead and the other harmonies adds tension and release in just the right doses, keeping listeners hooked from start to finish. The sharp guitar riffs, driving rhythm, and clever vocal arrangement combine to make this one of the album's most standout tracks for fans who appreciate the Beatles' musical precision and wit. It may be quirky, but that quirkiness is exactly what makes it so endearing. And if any song on A Hard Day's Night proves how tight and intuitive the band had become in blending their voices and styles, this was it. Ending A Hard Day's Night with I'll Be Back is nothing short of brilliant. It's the quintessential 60s gem that wraps up the album with a bittersweet lingering feeling. There's a quiet strength to the song that sets it apart from the more upbeat tracks that precede it. Its slower tempo and introspective lyrics offer us a reflective pause, like the final chapter in a heartfelt story. Paul's vocals here are tender, yet tinged with a hint of melancholy, perfectly capturing the feeling of uncertainty and longing that was so relatable and still is. The way the song gently fades out leaves you with a sense of wistful anticipation, as if the story isn't quite over, but paused, waiting for the next chapter. Musically, I'll Be Back stands out with its clean, minimal arrangement, subtle guitar lines, understated drumming, and harmonies that echo softly in the background. It's simple but effective, showing the Beatles' growing confidence in knowing when less is more. The song's sophisticated mood and heartfelt delivery make it an ideal closing track, one that doesn't shout for attention but stays with you long after the final note. As the album's closer, it serves as a beautiful bookend to a record filled with youthful energy, experimentation, and charm. I'll Be Back is a reminder that even within a pop album, there's room for vulnerability and depth. A timeless 60s gem that makes A Hard Day's Night feel complete and satisfying from start to finish. A Hard Day's Night may not always receive the same level of acclaim or be regarded as uniquely groundbreaking as its successor, Beatles for Sale, but it undeniably represents the Beatles at their absolute early peak. This album captures a band that has matured rapidly, showcasing tighter musicianship, sharper songwriting, and a growing confidence in blending their voices and styles. Each track, from the iconic title song to the quieter introspective moments like I'll Be Back and Things We Said Today, contributes to an album that is both timeless and deeply enjoyable, while it may sometimes be overshadowed by the experimental leaps and darker tones of later works. A Hard Day's Night stands proudly as a classic in its own right, an essential chapter in the Beatles' incredible journey that deserves to be celebrated just as much as their more well-known and universally heralded masterpieces.